Hey, welcome back to our study this week, looking at Malachi 1 through 5. Today we're looking at 3 through 5. And we're going to see how his love was demonstrated. Now, the people's question was, well, how have you loved us? God says, I loved you. They say, well, how have you loved us? And now he's going to give them the answer. He's going to give them a demonstration of his love towards them. He goes all the way back to Jacob and Esau. So God's answer is, yet is not Esau Jacob's brother? Now you might be thinking, that's a strange answer. What does Esau have to do with this? Isn't Malachi delivering his message to people who live like centuries after Jacob and Esau? Yeah, that's correct. But God's going to give an example of his love from the past to show that the consequences of his love are reality shaping. It's changed their lives. So when God sets his love on a person, the ramifications in this age are enormous. And for the next, well, they're eternal as well. Is not Esau, Jacob's brother, takes the people back into their own history. They know the story of Jacob and Esau because it is ingrained into who they are as a people. Jacob and Esau were the twin brothers of Abraham. And they were twin boys that were the sons of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham. So you have Jacob and Esau were the twin boys that were the sons of Isaac, who Isaac was the son of Abraham. God had made promises to Abraham, and those promises were passed on to Isaac, and who was born of Abraham's wife Sarah, but not to Ishmael, who was born to the slave woman Hagar. Isaac inherited the promises, and one would assume that these promises would pass on to the twins, since they both would have claimed to be being sons of Isaac, and they're sons of Abraham then. In reality, Esau was the firstborn of the twins, and so he would be the rightful heir to the birthright and the blessing, which was the whole story with Isaac being blind and all, the goat coverings and all that kind of stuff. So that's what the whole story was about, that Esau should have had both the birthright and the blessing, but God made a different choice. He chose to set his special favor, his special love upon Jacob, and not the rightful heir. So God says in Malachi, yet I have loved Jacob, but Esau I've hated. Paul picks up a similar argument in Romans chapter 9, where he's explaining why not everyone that is descended from Jacob or Israel is of Israel, and why everyone descended from Abraham is not really a part of Abraham's family. It's not because Jacob or Esau had done anything good or bad that one was loved over another. As Paul says, so then it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God who has mercy. It wasn't based on who they were as people or what they did. It was based on God's choice. God didn't choose Jacob because Jacob chose to follow God. Jacob had faith in God because God chose him. God's choice came first in eternity, and then that played out in reality, in this life. And so that's why Paul says it doesn't depend on human will. It wasn't Jacob's will or his exertion. It wasn't what he did. It wasn't his works that God chose him. It was because God has mercy. And so that's why. And you can see that because he says that he chose Jacob instead of Esau before they were even born, before they had the opportunity even to do anything good or bad, before they had the opportunity to do any exertions. That choice was already made. So, and this is exactly the point God is making here in Malachi. This is the point he has for Malachi and the people that day. They question, how have I loved you? Well, how could you even ask this question is really the answer. Didn't I choose Jacob, your ancestor, and not Esau? Didn't I do that? Don't you remember that? Don't you know who you are as a people? Then my love has always been with you. It's always been there. You've always seen it. You've always known it. You know it because you identify with it. Jacob, with Israel. You're called Israel. Your very name means that I love you because I chose you instead of Esau. Because you're Israel, that means you're the chosen people. You're not Edomites. I didn't choose Edom. I didn't choose Esau. So right there, you should know exactly the fact that I love you. But again, they're blind to this fact. Of course, the people knew their ancestry, but God forces them, since they asked the question, to look at what his preferential love has done for them versus what his withholding love has done for Esau's descendants. God speaks of Edom, which is the name of the country, and people that were descended from Esau. If you remember your history, Edom would grow into a large kingdom south of Israel and would have a succession of kings that ruled over it. The blessing of Isaac that Esau would profit from the land came true. God honored that. Though this was true, God says because of his choice to love Jacob and not Esau, the people could say, "We are shattered, but we will rebuild the ruins." But God says, "I have laid waste his hill country and left his heritage to jackals of the desert. They may build, but I will tear down. And they will be called the wicked country, and the people with whom the Lord is angry forever." The beginning of the end of Edom came around the same time Babylon captured Jerusalem when they went and destroyed Edom. Now Jerusalem would be left desolate for 70 years, and then the people were allowed to return. But God says, for Edom, it will remain destroyed. It won't be rebuilt. They can't. They can try, but they won't be able to be successful because he's chosen Israel and not Edom. So it comes down to God's choice, not upon human will or human exertion. It's God's choice. God then says to them, "Your own eyes shall see this, and you shall say, 'Great is the Lord beyond the border of Israel.'" Israel will be forced to say that not only is the Lord great amongst them and loves them, but that God is at work beyond their borders. He's great everywhere. God was reestablishing their borders, but when they looked to the south at Edom, they would have no choice but to admit that God was great and that he loved them because the Edom was destroyed. Edom became one giant billboard about God's love. They could look down there to see that where that country used to be, where some of their cousins were, and realize that they're gone now. They don't exist anymore. So they had no choice. They'd have to admit that God is great, God is amazing, he loves us. So how have I loved you? Well, just look at Edom and be amazed at God's steadfast love toward you. So, that's the same thing for us. We become blind to God's love, and even though he has billboards all around us of God's love, people, because of their sinfulness, have chosen to hide that. They don't want to see the truth that God loves. Think about the whole idea about abortion is that God has given you a child, right? God has given you this amazing gift. You have a heritage. You have, progeny. You have a person that's come from you, that's part of you, and that will live on after you. Your heritage, will continue on. The Bible talks about this, the blessing of the fruit of the womb. And people see that and like, I don't want that. Like, that's a blessing. That's amazing. That is the evidence that God is love. And you take that like, oh no, I don't see that. I don't want that. And that's what people do. It's that is just a symptom of the heart of people, that the heart is deceitfully wicked. It hates goodness. It hates true love. It hates things that it should love, but it has such a hatred towards those. And the only thing that's holding them back is the image of God that's still in them, even though it's tainted by sin. It's still there. It's holding them in place so that they don't completely go off into destructive evil. Now in hell, that's different, but for now, they're being restrained by the image of God that's still in them. And it's sad because the love of God is right there. A child is such a blatant example, but they don't see it. They rather believe the lies than the truth. So, how have I loved you? Really, the question should be, how have I not loved you? But we'll end there for today and come back next time. We'll take a look at the conclusion of our study. Got some things I want to think about as we work through these first 5 verses. Some things we need to do. So come back for that.